Welcome back to Outdoors with Larry Ray on ESPN 790 AM. Brought to you proudly by the Tennessee Wildlife and Resources Agency.
Hey, good Saturday morning. Welcome back to Outdoors with Larry Ray. And we're still trying to hook up with Jay Everett down at Hunter Safety System, Alema Shield Core Body Foam in Danville, Alabama. But we're just going to kind of juggle things around. This is real radioing, as I say. And,
maybe his alarm clock didn't go off.
It probably didn't, but I know this guy's alarm clock goes off a lot because he spends a lot of time out in the woods. Always good to talk to Brandon Butler, and now Brandon has got into the podcast business, and I love podcasts, so let's talk. Brandon Butler, how you doing, Brandon?
Well, there's not too many people I'd leave gobblers on the roost for.
I thought that was coming from you. Yeah, I thought that's coming. My final guest on today's show at the bottom of the hour is said the same thing, so we'll get you out of the way early. But, hey, let's talk. You and
I appreciate it.
Let's talk because I got this note from you that you and Nathan McLeod are known as Shags, which I think is a great name. You're going to have to come up with a nickname, too, to match Shags. You know, I mean, Brandon and Shags, has got to have a tune to it. But the co-host of the new Driftwood Outdoors podcast, I've watched it, listened to a couple of them. You guys are on top of it. At first, you talked about, I know you're Missouri-based and things along this line, but you're going to take a little bit of different approaches. You're going to try to give us all a little bit of taste. So talk about what the podcast means, and podcasts are the thing now. And I'd like to know, you've touched a lot of bases in your career, Brandon, and this one is another in your journey, as I might speak. So talk about this new podcast.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I've been writing a syndicated newspaper column for a little over 15 years. So I've been chasing down stories for a long time. But as you said, the podcast is kind of the new medium that everybody's jumping to. And I started one back in 2016 when I was still at the Conservation Federation, and went really well. But when I left that, I transitioned out of that role, and I've got this friend named Nathan McLeod, but everybody knows him as Shags because he's almost a 7-footer. He's like 6'9".
Oh, man.
He used to have big shaggy hair when he played basketball, and that's how he got the name.
Oh, Shags.
He's a morning show host every day, so he brings really the professional radio experience and all the production experience, and I bring a lot of the guests and stories. So it's a really good partnership, and I think people are really enjoying it. It's growing fast, and we're enjoying the interviews and the connections, and just having a good time with it. So,
and we'll talk about how you decide what's going to be on there, because I know I read your thing. It's been an interesting April, and I think the two guys are my co-hosts, Dave Gabbert. They're listening in, and Gene Smith are listening in. Both you guys, Dave and Gene, this has been an interesting April, right, guys?
Amen.
Yeah, it's like one big long April Fool's joke.
It is. So talk about that, Brandon, as far as how do you come up with your guest and really the format for it?
We try to be somewhat timely. Like, we've had a couple turkey shows in a row. We had the turkey biologist from Missouri on. Then we had Alex Rutledge on to talk turkey killing, turkey calling. So we hit the biology, then we hit the hunting. We just did a smallmouth bass one with Billy Smith on the Current River.
Yes, I watched.
And
yes.
So, we're opportunistic as well. If we're going to be at a show or ICAST or SHOT Show, we're going to try to gobble up as many big names outside of Missouri as we can.
Gobble up, I like that.
So we're looking for those opportunities.
You threw that gobble up in there, didn't you? I mean, you had to throw a little turkey expression in there. That's.
I took a video of my kid the other day messing up fly fishing, and you can hear me laughing in the video on Instagram. And she said, "Dad, you've been calling turkeys for 2 weeks. Now you sound like a turkey."
Now you sound. Well, I mean, so when you do one, because a lot of people ask me when I'm going to do a podcast, and I say, well, I can't get out of my pod. I can barely cast, So some of the stuff like this is an idea. So you guys came together. You've known each other a long time. Other words, right? I mean, have y'all been friends?
5 years. So when I was when I was the director of the Conservation Federation, he was this crazy guy on the radio, and he's got a big following. So he's on the radio talking about some of the anti-conservation legislation that was taking place in Jefferson City.
Okay.
And he was kind of the guy that's, I'm going to storm the Capitol with a bullhorn.
And this is the guy you ended up
man,
with?
Let's get together and talk about a better idea. Yeah. So he's kind of the wild and crazy classic rock radio guy, and I'm a little bit more of the let's tone it down. So the marriage is pretty good.
And the story ideas, you try to be timely. Is that right?
Yeah, we try. We're getting ready to do some crappie fishing ones. We just did turkey, and we'll move through, and as we can pick up, people outside of the area. So I don't know if Bill Dance is listening today, but that's like our dream is to interview Bill Dance.
Well, he's listening.
So he's listening today.
Yeah, he's listening. He never sleeps. He's up early heading someplace.
Tommy Aiken's supposed to help me. Tommy Aiken's supposed to help me get to Bill Dance. So that's
Tommy's probably listening to out of Brownsville, Greenville, in Greenville, Tennessee. But the logistics of doing this, and Dave, I know from your time with the TWRA in the information department, as you ended in the final parts of your career over 30 years, we never heard of a podcast, but it became part. You know that in the last couple of years, that podcast, the TWRA jumped on that, didn't they?
Oh yeah, we were fortunate to acquire some really talented individuals, in that department. That in the information education section, so they decided to incorporate a podcast, and the times I sat in on them, they were fun to do.
They were fun, and Brandon, with the experience, I've known Brandon a long time through Southeastern Outdoor Press Association and other things. The podcast to me looks like it would be fun, but at the same time, nothing ever works perfect. So talk about the logistics of doing this. I mean, because you're right there.
The funny thing is, Larry, you might not realize it, but you're already doing a podcast. You're just airing it as a radio show.
I realize.
So all you got to do now is take this and air it as a podcast, and you can double dip, and people can pick this up whenever. So, I mean, it's basically a radio show that's recorded. It's what DVR did for TV, podcast doing for radio.
Yes, yeah.
When everybody wanted to have a YouTube channel when they first came out, and some of the better ones floated to the top. And we're hoping that this big swell of podcast movement will bring people to the platforms. And then as time marches on, the better ones will float to the top, and we just hope to be there.
Well, I'm watching it, and folks, tell them how they can go to go to the podcast. Where do they have to go?
Yeah, it's called Driftwood Outdoors, and we're based in Missouri, but we're trying to cover the country, and we're very timely with the species that we're after, very generalist, bass fishing, crappie fishing, duck hunting, deer hunting, turkey hunting. We're a hunting and fishing podcast. It's on driftwoodoutdoors.com, but it's also on all the podcast platforms out there like iTunes.
Yes,
anywhere that you would find a podcast.
Well, and every Tuesday morning, is that right? I mean, you're trying to do a new one?
We're trying to drop it.
Huh?
12:01 a.m.
12:01 on Tuesday.
To be ready for everybody on.
So I'm used to deadlines and things along that line. How does that feel when you're about to deliver another one? I mean, talk about the anxiety and getting it done right.
I excited to listen to it, yeah. No, I mean, I'm fortunate to have Shags as a partner because I know the production is going to be done right. And, a lot of these podcasts that are coming out are people that have never edited radio before, and frankly, a lot of them don't sound that good because of that.
That's right.
To have a guy who's been doing professional radio for almost 20 years, it really elevates you kind of right off the bat. So
well, that's my goal.
Plus.
That's my goal in 2020. I've been in discussions with people and things along the line through my website, lroutdoors.com. My man's ready to start it. I've watched you. Your guys have. I can tell you're putting a lot into it, and it's not just two guys there, Shags and his buddy Brandon, putting worms on a hook. or anything along that
I
line.
get a lot out of it too.
You do, right?
You know, and the one that I did for the Conservation Federation, I'm actually in the process now of turning that into a 2-volume set of books.
Really?
That's going to be kind of like a pared down version of all the interviews, and I'm going to write an intro to each of those interviews.
Yeah.
And I'm having a pencil sketch done of each of the guests. And
it's
really going to be it's going to be conservation conversations from the Show-Me State. Volume 1 and Volume 2.
When do you hope to have that?
Hope to have them out by Christmas. But in that, there's 22 chapters. I did 22 episodes of that podcast, and 3 of those guys have since passed away.
Oh man!
And they were all real like luminaries in the early days of the Department of Conservation at Missouri. So
yeah,
you know, their family, their friends, the people who were coming after them.
Yes.
To have those hour-long, long-form narratives to be able to go back to and listen to on demand. It's really
pretty cool.
Really a treasure to have those guys recorded.
Yeah, it's like on PBS when they bring back the oldies from my era of rock and roll. You know, it enables you to.
I feel that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're such.
Whenever they do a Ken Burns documentary on PBS.
Yeah, I'm still watching baseball, Ken Burns in baseball right now because there's no baseball, so I have to watch that. But so again, they can go to driftwoodoutdoors.com. Check out the information at 12:01 every Tuesday. So what's coming up next Tuesday?
My cousin Derek, actually, when we were down here for turkey season, we started talking, and we hadn't planned to record it.
Yeah.
Him,
yeah.
But he rode his bike across the country. So we started teasing him, calling him the Forrest Gump of bicycling.
Yes.
Okay. And he rode a bike from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. And it's really his story of taking 3 months across America.
You've teased
on a bicycle.
Yeah,
and he's not like what you're picturing right now. Like you're probably picturing somebody in spandex and a helmet. Like he did this wearing Crocs and cut off blue jeans and drinking beer. So I don't know how he did it, but it's a hell of a story.
Well, we can't. Okay, that's Driftwood Outdoors, Brandon Butler and Shags McLeod. Thank you, Brandon, buddy. We'll keep up with it, and I may follow after you. Okay. All right. Talk to you. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back and keep Larry Outdoors with Larry Ray rolling, Gene Smith and Dave Gabbert online. We'll be right back.